Welcome to the Starzology Astrology podcast. I am your host, Alison Price. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking to you about a chart interpretation guide, which will help anyone who actually does do chart readings or works as an astrologer. As a private astrology teacher and coach, I frequently receive inquiries about where to start. Because the thing is that if you're going to do a chart reading and say you've booked your client for 1 hour for your reading, which is what I suggest to start with, because these things always overrun. The point being that in a 1 hour conversation, you can only cover a certain amount of the chart. You will not be able to dive into all the little details that are in a chart. And really, you want to focus on what's important to your client to start with, rather than some obscure piece of the chart, which could be dealt with later. Now, if you feel that you do want to do in-depth readings for your clients, which makes sense, the best way to do that is to organize yourself into not just one consultation, but a set of 3 or 5, so you can get back with your client and make sure that you are going deeper into their chart, which you can do over several consultations. It cannot all be done in 1 hour. However, the reality is that most clients will come to you for a 1 hour consultation. And really after that, they're not even listening, so it doesn't really make much sense to do them any longer. But the point is that within that hour, you need to be able to zoom in and focus on what is important and critical in the chart, so you're talking about that first. Now, this is why I set up this chart interpretation guide, because it is correlating the information within a chart into sections such as love, family, and romance. Well, love and romance is the same thing. Love, family, and career, and many other sections, so that if particularly they come to you with a question, say, about their career, you can zoom in on that and discuss that piece first. And what I've done in this guide is I've drawn all the elements within a chart that pertain to, say, career, and put them together in a group. So we've got different group headings for different sections for your consultations. Now, if you are already on my mailing list, you will have received this guide. And for those of you who are now interested or just hearing this for the first time, there is a link below this podcast that takes you to the post on the website where you can sign up to get your copy. It's a PDF copy and in a letter size. It's pretty straightforward. And for those of you who really can't wait for this information, I'll get to it in a moment. So there are numerous approaches to conducting chart readings, but the methods I prefer involves initially extracting the crucial elements and saving the remaining details for a later exploration. Or to put it simply, I like sticking to the main roads and leaving the less prominent ones for another time. Your clients are likely to be aware of the prominent features in their own charts, such as the chart ruler energies or challenging aspects to their sun, so it's sensible to address these obvious components first. I'm not suggesting that you disregard the other features that appear in a chart, but rather prioritize the information that you're going to be talking about. In this way, you can organize the information into manageable portions and present it in a manner that your clients can easily comprehend. And as I've said before, it would be best to schedule 3 to 5 sessions over a 6-month period for each client, as this allows a comprehensive interpretation of their natal chart potential in various areas, including things like general life, romance, career, and health. So let's just go over a few of the report headings. Section 2 of the guide offers valuable starting points to help you piece together the various elements of a chart reading. And I've carefully organized the different features of the chart to facilitate your interpretation process. And it's completely understandable if you're not familiar with all the details I'm going to mention now. So don't worry, use this resource to the best of your current abilities, and know that as you continue your astrology journey, you'll gradually uncover and comprehend the more advanced components. So this guide is actually in 2 sections. Now, section 1 has the margin and body layouts. So when I say margin and body, I'm talking about when you look at your page, you've got a margin on the left-hand side. It's usually about 1 inch or 25 millimeters wide. And this is your margin where you're jotting down your notes. And then the body side, which is on the right-hand side, is where you flesh out your information. So I've got this in 6 particular parts. Part 1 is the balances. Part 2 will be your ascendant complex. Part 3 is the chart ruler complex. Part 4 is luminaries. Part 5 is other planets, and then part 6 is major aspect patterns. And then section 2 of this guide actually goes into the deeper areas of life that you would want to explore, such as general personality, family and home life, learning and education, health and body, financial, love life and romance, work life and career goals, social life, beliefs, spiritual and religious life, creativity and self-expression, and the shadow side. So the idea here is that if your client says they want to look into their love life, you can zoom straight in onto the love life areas of a chart and pull them all together separately. Let me give you some examples of love life. So your margin notes for love life are falling in love. So this would be the 5th house complex and the 5th house ruler complex. The next section would be committed partnerships. And here you're going to focus in on the Venus complex, the 7th house complex, the 7th house ruler complex, and any planets in Libra. And for your intimate life, you're going to zoom in on the 8th house complex, the 8th house ruler complex, the Mars complex, the Pluto complex, and any planets in Scorpio. These are all the sections that you would pull together when you are considering a consultation about love life and romance. This is just one of the sections in the guide where I've brought it all together. And for those of you who are thinking, what's a complex? So a complex is anything that has to do with that planet or that house or that point within a chart. So let me just zoom in a little deeper and explain to you exactly what I consider to be part of your Venus complex. So first of all, we want to know Venus's sign. So we want to know what the sign is and what that sign means. Therefore, we also want to know what is Venus's essential dignity score. Therefore, we also want to know what is Venus's essential dignity score. And here you want to consider dignity, exaltation, fall, detriment, term, face, and what that means. And you also want to note if Venus is the almutin of the chart or the lord of the geniture and what that means. So that's all to do with the sign Venus is in. The next point for your Venus complex would be, what about Venus's house? So we want to say, well, which house is Venus in and what does that mean? We want to know if Venus is in an angular, succeeding, or cadent house, and what does that mean? And then whether or not Venus has accidental dignity therefore, is it in the 2nd or 7th house, and what that means? And also if Venus is a singleton by hemisphere, and what that means, and really which houses Venus rules within the chart. So that all pertains to Venus's house. The next thing to consider in your Venus complex would be the direction. So is Venus stationary, retrograde, or is it even direct? So you would want to consider that as well. Next, you want to look at Venus by position. So here we're talking about Venus's position within the chart. So is it the most elevated planet? And if so, what that means? Is Venus in the midheaven or ascendant Gorkalin sectors and what that means? You want to consider whether Venus is under the beams, combust, or cazimi. You also want to note if Venus the final dispositor or a gateway planet in the dispositor tree and what that means. You also need to consider if Venus is oriental or occidental and what that means, and whether Venus is antisia or contra antisia to other planets and what that means, and whether Venus is anaretic or in a critical degree and what that means. So there you're having a good zoom in onto Venus's actual position within the chart. Next up will be Venus's aspects. So first you would list all the conjunctions and what they mean, oppositions, trines, squares, and sextiles. Then you would move on to the semi-squares, sesquiquadrates, semi-sextiles, and quincunxes that Venus received. I also always add in quintiles because I love using that particular aspect, and I'll chat about that more another time. And the final thing we consider in the Venus complex is, what are the major aspect patterns? So the question really is Venus a part of a major aspect pattern, like a kite or a mystic rectangle or something? And if so, is Venus then the focal planet within that major aspect pattern, and therefore it's gaining strength there too? So this is just an example of how to pull a Venus complex, but you would do that for all your planets. So you would have your Mars complex and the Moon's complex and so on. So in this way, we've gone into detail of one particular planet, and I've spoken about the romance section as well. What I'd like to do now is just discuss the general personality, which is probably where most people are going to start, because again, you don't have to do everything. So my report headings for general personality, you're going to be looking at these things within the chart. This is really where you're going to start. So for personality, you want to know what is the strong polarity, is it active or passive? You're going to want to know what is your strong element, is it fire, earth, air or water, and decide that. Next, you want to know what is the strong mode, is it cardinal, fixed or mutable? Now you want to know which is the strong hemisphere, north, south, east or west. And what about your strong quadrants, is it first, second, third or fourth? And your strong triple division, 1, 2 or 3. At this point, you would bring in the ascendant complex. You would bring in the chart ruler complex, and the chart ruler is the planet that rules the sign on the ascendant. You also want to look at the Titus Ptolemaic aspect by orb. That is always important. Any sign that is strong with 3 or more planets in it, and any house that is strong with 3 or more planets in it, and the general chart shape, bucket, seesaw, or what have you. Our second subheading within here is character, as opposed to personality. Now we're looking at the sun. You would look at the sun complex. You want to discover the final dispositor complex, if there is one, the Almutan complex, and the ascendant sun and moon blend. Are they working together? That brings in character. And then the third subheading here is life storyline. So here you're going to be looking at major aspect patterns in order of importance. So stelliums come a bit in front of grand crosses, and they both come in front of yods and so on. And you also want to know what is the dominant aspect. Are there more squares in the chart? Are there more trines in the chart? And what does that mean? So these are the 3 subheadings that you would pull for a general personality. And once you've pulled all this together, the depth to which you go in these areas is really up to you. So the idea is that this guide is giving you a starting off point about how to organize the information within a chart, so that you don't get this overwhelm and think, well, there's 150 things here I need to look at, but I've only got 1 hour to talk about it. So the idea is that we're zooming in on what's important first and leaving the rest for a later day. When I first started interpreting charts a million years ago, I would go through every single thing. I would look at all the aspects to the sun, all the aspects to Chiron, the pattern, the dispositor tree, the whole thing. And really, I do it for each chart I do now, but now I'm quicker. But back then, I was unable to determine what was more important, the sun in the first house or some semi-sextile aspect between the south node and Chiron, which is not as important as positions of these visible planets. So the idea is that you want to weigh what's important, and not all chart features are created equal. Some are more important to others. If a planet is the chart ruler, it is more important than the planet sitting next to it. And these determinations have to be made by the astrologer while you're working on interpreting the chart before you meet with your client. So this is why I created the guide, just to help people sort things out so you don't have to spend 5 days interpreting a chart. I mean, it's overwhelming. The idea is that this guide will help you bring the information together. Again, you don't have to do everything, but if you're focusing on, say, a career consultation or a love life consultation, you can zoom in straight away and see, oh, I need to look at A, B, C, and D, and that's the whole point of having the guide. And again, this is the way I do it. Of course, in time, as you get better at chart readings, you're going to develop your own style of interpretation, but this is how I do it. So many people had asked me where do you start? What do you do first? This is why I created this guide. So I welcome you to click through on the link below and download the PDF for yourself, and do let me know what you think of the guide. If you feel that this episode has something of value and you'd like to share it with your friends, please do share the link and let them know as well. Also, if you have any questions, you can email us at starzology@gmail.com, and we will be answering your questions in a later episode. Thanks for sharing a part of your day with me. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the 2 main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.